Manchester City, Arsenal. This was the footballing equivalent of the irresistible force paradox, which posits the question, what happens when the unstoppable force meets the immovable object? It was an explosive game with plenty of passion and drama. The game started with City flying out of the gates, scoring early through a brilliant move by Savinho, who looks like a player born to play for a Guardiola team. Ghosting past an over-eager Calafiore. Beautiful first touch, decisive pass into the path of a irrepressible Erling Haaland to finish with ruthless conviction. Arsenal regained parity with a quick free kick, resulting in what I think was one of the contenders for goal of the season so far. Calafiore with a cultured left foot strike from outside the box, making amends for his role in City's opening goal. With the score level, Arsenal grew into the game, finding their fluency and subsequently taking the lead with yet another Gabriel header from a corner. The half finished in contentious fashion, with Trossard being ejected for delaying the restart, which of course completely changed the complexion of the game. The second half was nothing but one-way traffic, City attacking and a defiant 10-man Arsenal defending deep, ultimately succumbing in the dying minutes of additional time to an opportunistic John Stones equalizer. What are my thoughts after this game? Arsenal are a lot closer than I thought. They're a lot closer to Manchester City in terms of quality, belief, desire than I had previously thought. Unlike the equivalent fixture last year where Arsenal were content to do nothing but defend, this time they actually came to play. Yes, they had to weather an early City storm, but once they found their way into the game and found the rhythm, they actually outplayed City in the latter stages of the first half and looked comfortable leading up until the break. Of course, the red card changed all of that. My second thought is that Arsenal are now a defensive team. Not even just taking into account this game. Going back into the transfer window, their first and most expensive signing was a defender, even though they still don't have an out-and-out striker. They let go Nketiah, closest thing they had to a striker. They let go Emil Smith-Rowe, Reece Nelson on loan, I know, but let go a lot of their attacking options and opted to bolster what was already the best defense. So Arsenal has gone through a philosophical change. It's a shift that Arteta has brought about. In the words of Alex Ferguson, your legend, Alex Ferguson.
That's Sir Alex Ferguson, isn't that? Yeah.
Sir Alex Ferguson. Offense wins games, defense wins titles. So I'm looking at Arsenal now and I see a team that is designed to actually win the title. Do I think that they'll win it this year? I'm a lot closer to saying yes after this game.
Yeah, I thought this was a Titanic event. The drama, the intrigue, it basically embodied everything we love about the Premier League. When I think about Arsenal, and do I think much differently about Arsenal now after seeing that game versus seeing them last season? A bit of me says yes, a bit of me says no, right? I didn't expect Arsenal to, let's say, take the lead within the first half and show that their football, not just the defensive side of their football, but the totalitarian view of what they offer as a team was on par with City, and maybe even better in some aspects, highlighting the set piece sort of brilliance that they're able to produce week after week after week. Now, are Arsenal any closer? Are they going to win the title this season? I'm not convinced, and here's why. Manchester City were without 3 of their 4 best players, and if we need to name those players, just so everyone's on the same page, it would be Rodri, Kevin De Bruyne, Phil Foden, who did appear in the game, but we know he's not been fit, was ill, and he's nowhere near his usual level. And then we have Arsenal. We're missing one player in the form of Martin Odegaard. I know he's the captain. We know how important he is. But when you think about the relative strength and the first 11 of each team, I think Arsenal were much closer to having their first 11 versus Manchester City.
If you think about the transfer window and what Arsenal did in the transfer window, they brought in Mikel Merino, who is supposed to sit in that midfield 3. So I think they missed 2 critical pieces in that midfield. And if you look at the relative importance of each player to their team. Yes, Kevin De Bruyne is a brilliant player, and he does a lot of things in a very unique way. But they have other players that can fill that role, not necessarily with the potency or the quality of a De Bruyne, but they can fill that role pretty well. Arsenal don't have that. Yes, I know that brings into question the depth of Arsenal. And that's probably a conversation we can have another time.
Arsenal were much closer to having their first 11 than City. Obviously, Arsenal were on the road, City at home, so there's obviously home field advantage. At the same time, I think, am I more convinced that Arsenal are going to have more of a title challenge than they did last season? I would say no. I think what they convinced me of is that they haven't fallen back a little bit, right? Because when we looked at the transfer windows, and you and I talked about this offline, specifically for Arsenal, we were a bit surprised, maybe a bit disappointed that Arsenal weren't a little bit more aggressive in the transfer window and didn't bring in some bigger players. We know Osimhen, was on the market to fill that void that some of us believe is there for Arsenal in the number 9 spot. At the end of the day, Arsenal proved that their mentality is closer to being a championship mentality. That's what I saw in this game. We saw the players facing off with each other, Gabriel and Haaland at the end of the game. It's part of what I loved about the game, and I like the mentality that Arsenal brought into the game. And as you said, they weren't just content to sit and defend. They actually were there to play some football and believed that they could potentially win the game. And that belief, that mentality, I think is the thing that they need to continue to build and grow in order to get over the hump and be able to overtake City at the top of the mountain.
But that's my point, is that the belief that they have, that was on show in this game. I would go back to the Tottenham game, where in the face of adversity, they were able to show that they could face the challenge head on, get the result. Let's bear in mind, they're playing away at Manchester City, the best team arguably in the world, with 10 men in the second half.
They're without a doubt title contenders. I don't think anyone would argue that coming into the season. I think the question is more, do we believe that they can actually win the title? Can they dethrone City, not depend on City to make a mistake in a stretch and drop points against a team that's like Fulham or someone like that, but can they go and win the title? That means beat City at home in the next fixture. Entirely possible, right? On the results of this game, can they? But can Arsenal get full points against Liverpool? Yeah, based on that performance, yeah, they can get full points against Liverpool, home and away potentially. So I believe they're strong title contenders. Right now, though, I would say when I look at the team that Arsenal put on the pitch, and I look at the team that City put on the pitch, City were more weak inside.
Coming away from that fixture, Arsenal being disappointed with a draw away at City. That says a lot about where they are as a club right now. And yes, of course, in this moment, City are without a few very influential players at some point of the season. I'm sure Arsenal will also be without some very influential players. That is the nature of a footballing season, especially in this environment where there are so many games. So they will both have to face those challenges. And in this regard, Arsenal have passed the challenges that they faced, very, very difficult challenges, with flying colours. They've gotten the win away at Tottenham. They got a draw away at Man City with 10 men. They got out of the Brighton game with 10 men. So they have overcome a lot of challenges at this stage of the season. At some point, fortune is going to be in their favour. And they're going to have a run of games where they're going to have a full squad. And then they can really express their offensive side. But what they have shown right now is that they are completely content and capable of relying on their defense to win games, right? And that is the hallmark of a champion. Not only, literally win games. The last 3 goals that Arsenal have scored have been by defenders.
And I don't disagree with defensive sort of fortress that they've built at the back. It's well above any other club in the league right now. You can argue that Liverpool has a strong defense, but it's not at the same level. I guess the 2 points that I would think that I would make about Arsenal, one about their defense, is that it's difficult to rely on defense alone. And I'm not saying it's defense alone, but primarily defense, simply because of a couple of your points, right? The number of games that the teams play, and we know how important Gabriel and Saliba, that center back partnership, is to the success of the Arsenal defense. At some point, they're going to need to rest. At some point, there'll be an injury. The other thing I would say is just from the manager's perspective, it's Arteta. Is there an issue with discipline within the squad? We see Declan Rice and Trossard both get second yellows for kicking the ball away, putting their team in very, very difficult positions where they drop points. And you could argue Arsenal have dropped 4 points in the first 5 game weeks due to a lack of discipline. So I think that's something for Arteta to go back to the squad. And I'm sure this is what he's doing. And he's saying, let's look at the video. If we don't make these 2 mistakes, we're at the top of the table.
Those incidents, they highlight a certain naivety that still resides within the squad. Nevertheless, I see them as closer. I'm not saying that they will win the league, but I see them as closer than they were last season, which could mean that they win it.
Versus Brighton, we know that both teams have been sort of flying in a way, sort of not. Chelsea more recently have gotten really good results. I think they've been sort of blowing teams out to a certain extent, scoring a lot of goals. Brighton, on the other hand, have a good squad. Danny Welbeck sort of in a renaissance of his career. João Pedro, coming back from injury in the last game, should be able to contribute. So this is going to be an intriguing matchup this week. Of course, Chelsea at home, Stamford Bridge. We know how good they can be there. We see the likes of Cole Palmer, Nico Jackson, Pedro Neto, Jadon Sancho, all starting to gel over the last few game weeks. And I think this really bodes well for Chelsea's chances this upcoming game week. And you know me, I haven't been big on Chelsea. I think there are a lot of questions about whether or not the squad can really gel and come together. But it seems like that's happening fairly quickly. And because of that, I'm actually predicting Chelsea to get the W. A 2-1 victory versus Brighton. I don't think Brighton will be able to contain Cole Palmer and company, but I do see Brighton breaking through the Chelsea defense where there's some rotation, some injuries. So 2-1 Chelsea this weekend.
Yeah, we've seen what Chelsea can do when they do gel. Nicholas Jackson getting a brace, Cole Palmer, of course, then what Cole Palmer does. The introduction of Sancho into the starting lineup for me is critical. He seems to be ready with a point to prove, ready to display his skills, and he seems to fit in perfectly with all the players that Chelsea have at disposal. It's very difficult to bet against them unless Brighton really have an exceptional performance. They're capable of it, and Hutzler has proven that he's up for the task. I just see Chelsea with too many weapons coming off of an encouraging performance in the last game. I think they will continue this momentum, get the win, and I wouldn't be surprised if they actually blow out Brighton. So 2-0 Chelsea.
Newcastle versus City. Of course, City coming off that very, very tiring draw against Arsenal. Will they be weakened? Let's see. Newcastle looking a little bit iffy right now. They started the first 4 game weeks unbeaten, lost their last fixture. We can say that Isak doesn't look sort of fully in form right now. And we see Eddie Howe trying to bring Harvey Barnes into the starting lineup, putting him on the left, which forces Anthony Gordon to the right, and he's a little bit less effective on the right than he is on the left. So For Newcastle, there's some questions. See Eddie Howe making changes to the starting lineup. Livramento had started most of the games coming into the last game week, and then Trippier was brought back into the starting position at right back. So we don't know what that defense is going to bring. So Newcastle not quite settled. I thought they would be a little bit more settled coming into this game week. They had a lot of good momentum. But what I saw last week gave me some questions. And with City being City, going about their business, being very professional, winning the games they should win, I see them going to Newcastle and getting a quite comfortable victory. I would say 3-1 for City, with a brace potentially from Holland. Manchester United versus Tottenham Hotspur. United coming off of a very disappointing draw against Crystal Palace. This is a team that they should have beaten. They had many, many chances to go ahead and put Crystal Palace away, but weren't clinical with finishing last week. And is this something that will get in their heads going into following game weeks? Because the pressure is mounting on Manchester United. They're falling behind the pack in the race for the top four. And clearly this is a must win. We know that Tottenham are a strong team, not a great team, but a strong team. And the pressure will be mounting on Ten Hag. So the question is, can Manchester United deal with the pressure, and can they produce a performance at home? For Tottenham, maybe things look a little bit brighter. Dominic Solanke came back last game week, got his first goal. I think they'll have some joy against Manchester United, particularly on the right flank. We know that Luke Shaw has been out as left back for Manchester United all season. Diogo Dalot has been filling in, and last week we saw him invert into the midfield against Crystal Palace, which left that channel wide open on the right flank for the imposing attack. And Spurs have Brennan Johnson, who's one of the fastest players in the league. And if Diogo Dalot is out of position, which he most likely will be if at some point, if that inverted style of play continues, we might see some fast break opportunities and potentially a goal from that side of the pitch for Spurs. So this should be an open game. Both teams like to score in transition, like to play fast. We know that Spurs play a very, very high line, so we should see the likes of Garnacho, Ahmad, Rashford being able to break that down as they do with many other teams. So I predict this to be a fairly high-scoring affair. I don't think much separates these teams at the time, so I'll go with 2-2, draw.
Of course, I see this turning out a little bit differently than you do as a Manchester United fan. I think they're equally balanced in terms of talent, but I think that Spurs have more weapons to exploit the vulnerabilities of Manchester United than vice versa. The pace of Spurs, we know Spurs are all out attack. They don't play any other type of football. So United will have to be compact, and will have to deal with that wide threat of Spurs, with the pace that they have on the wings. I see the back line in general as vulnerable against quick interplay around the box, which Spurs are quite good at with Maddison, Son, Kulusevski. And I just don't see De Ligt having the mobility and the agility to deal with that. And I see United struggling at the moment to actually score goals. Yes, Spurs are susceptible to counterattacks, but with Van der Ven being as quick as he is, Xerxes, I guess, will start that game. Not someone who's blessed with a lot of pace. Yes, there is pace on the flanks, but I think Spurs have also pace in the fullback positions. So I see Spurs being quite comfortable in this game, and I see a 2-0, possibly a 2-1 if United get something to fall their way. But I see Spurs taking advantage of this opportunity to get themselves back on track and get themselves some positive momentum.
So there you have it, Premier Bros, breaking down the Arsenal versus City matchup. Do you agree with what we had to say? let us know in the comments. I'm looking forward to the next game week. We had some predictions. Let us know what you think as well. Tune in next week for some more Premier League analysis that's on point.